meeting to order. Renata, roll call, please.
Thank you. Miller.
Here.
English.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Ettinger.
Here.
McEvers.
Here.
Gookin.
Yo.
Back to you, Honorary Mayor.
Woody, please lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now turn the meeting over to my assistant, Mayor Widmeyer.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Anderson. So for the audience here, this is our honorary mayor for the day, Carson Anderson, who is a 5th grader at Fernand. So he'll be helping with the first part of the meeting here. So welcome, Carson. So Councilman Gookin did say it's nice to have someone that actually knows what they're doing. So welcome, Carson. So we will move on to, I don't believe that we have any amendments to the agenda tonight, so we will move on to our proclamations. And our first proclamation is for fair housing. And this is a proclamation declaring the month of April as Fair Housing Month. And do we have, Hillary, are you going to accept that proclamation? So I will read the proclamation. Whereas on April 11th, 1968, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968. The 1968 Act clarified the prohibition of discrimination regarding the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, sex, and as later amended, disability and family status. And whereas this month is deemed Fair Housing Month and should be a celebration of laws and efforts of citizens to remove impediments to equal housing opportunities and to emphasize and ensure the rights of all citizens in an effort to provide housing choice. And whereas the City of Coeur d'Alene supports the ongoing efforts of the many organizations, housing, and service providers through continuing education and outreach to affirmatively further fair housing. Now, therefore, I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, do hereby proclaim April 2019 as Fair Housing Month. And Hillary, do you have something to talk to us about fair housing?
I do. I'll just have a few quick notes. Thank you, Mayor and Honorary Mayor Anderson. Thank you for being here. So it's an important reminder each April that the City of Coeur d'Alene does support and promote fair housing. And so I think that's important for city staff, for agencies that we work with, for landlords, for renters, and for everyone just to understand what are the obligations for that. Idaho has made some great progress over the years in addressing housing discrimination through a combination of education and enforcement tools. And the City of Coeur d'Alene, we do partner with other agencies. We partner with the Coeur d'Alene Association and other communities to support fair housing education. There is a conference coming up in Spokane, so often the Idaho people will go to Spokane, the North Idaho people, so we can all make sure we're getting the adequate fair housing training. So this year it's on Thursday, April 11th at the Spokane Convention Center, and tickets are available. I don't believe it's sold out yet. And then we also, the city does have some resources on our website. So for those watching from home or here in the audience, so the city's website, cdaid.org, if you go under the residents tab, and then under this, the center column community, there's a fair housing link, and that has some information and resources. And then there are also some other fair housing resources, so Intermountain Fair Housing Council and the Idaho Housing and Finance Association, and their websites are listed here. That's all I have.
Great.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Hillary. Appreciate that. The next proclamation we have is declaring the week of April 8th through the 12th as the Week of the Young Child. We have Samantha Tuscan here. Come on up, Samantha, and I'll read the proclamation, and then you'll hear a message from you. Whereas the Idaho Association for the Education of Young Children and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, are celebrating the Week of the Young Child, April 8th to the 12th, 2019. Whereas these organizations are working to improve early learning opportunities, including early literacy programs that can provide a foundation of learning for children in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. whereas teachers and others who make a difference in the lives of young children in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho deserve thanks and recognition, and whereas public policies that support early learning for all young children are crucial to young families' futures. Therefore, I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do hereby proclaim the week of April 8th through April 12th, 2019 as Week of the Young Child. And welcome, Samantha. Happy to have you here.
Honorary Mayor, Council, and community, as on behalf of the City of Coeur d'Alene Child Care Commission as well as early childhood professionals, I'd like to thank you for recognizing this week as well as your continued support and recognition towards early years as laying the foundation for school readiness as well as later life success. So thank you.
All right, and I'll bring this proclamation to you. So thank you, Samantha, for being here tonight. Now we will move on to public comment. Anyone wishing to come and address the council on anything pertaining to city government business shall have 3 minutes to do so. Do we have anyone wishing to give public comment tonight? Okay. Not seeing any, we have announcements. Is there any member of the city council that has an announcement? Kiki, we'll start with you.
I just wanted to give everyone a quick reminder that it's free Coeur de Green coming up. So information about that is going to be on the website, and there's an article coming out in the newspaper. So get your organic, good for your lawn fertilizer free.
Great, thank you. Amy?
And I wanted just to share that we have some vacancies on the Arts Commission. And so there's an application on the city's website, which is cdaid.org, and we welcome anyone to apply.
All right. Anyone else on the council have anything? Well, I wanted to thank Mayor Anderson for being here today. I wanted to thank his mother as well and all of his family that may be watching on Facebook Live. You've done an outstanding job as mayor. And in a few years, you probably got to graduate from high school and then maybe college, and you can come back and you can run for mayor for good, right?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're fine. We'll see you later.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
Ittinger?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Aye.
English?
Yes.
Motion carried. Now we will have our other business. We have resolution number 19-010, establishing a pilot project for residential parking only permits in certain blocks in Midtown. Hillary Anderson.
Well, good evening again, Mayor and Council. So I am here before you to discuss Midtown Parking Plan and the one component that we are asking to move forward, which is the resident-only permit parking pilot project. So as you are well aware, we had commissioned the study for Midtown, the parking study by Rich & Associates last year. They completed that in September. The area is from Harrison on the north side, Foster Avenue on the south, and between 3rd Street and east of 4th Street to the alley. Core area is here shown in red with Boise Avenue to the north, Reed Avenue to the south. And so the parking plan is really focused on the core area. There are 10 solutions. I won't walk through all those unless council has questions this evening. You've seen these before. Really just going to focus on item 5 and then give you a couple of updates as well. So number 5 is to create residential parking zones and enforcement. This was a recommendation from Rich & Associates. And so staff has been working on coming up with this resolution for the City Council to consider. It would be for a 1-year trial basis, so that's why it's a pilot project. It would be adopted as a resolution, not in city code. And so it allows us the opportunity to evaluate its effectiveness. And so it really is just in that core area and just on 3 blocks. And so in your resolution, you'll see those blocks. I've noted here where they're located. On the next slide, I'll show you the map as well. As we discussed at the last council meeting, we have changed it so it's 66% of each block in order for that block to go into effect. So rather than requiring all 3 blocks to have 66% participation, although we did have some feedback from Midtown residents on those streets, and they are interested in participating. So I think we will get that compliance probably on all 3 of the blocks. How we have it drafted is it would be $30 for the permit, and that would, what's changed in your resolution that's on the dais is instead of it being a window decal like Fort Grounds, we've changed it to that they would get for $30, they would get 2 hang tags. So they could use it for their own vehicle, a family member, a visitor, rather than having to do visitor passes because there's such limited parking. And I believe all the homes in this area already have off-street parking. So this would be a way to, minimize the need for visitor parking, but still allow the residents to have the ability to use the permits and have their friends and family. And the enforcement, as we discussed before, would be done by the police department. We had evaluated some other options, and they just really weren't going to be effective for Midtown because a lot of the issues with parking in Midtown in these residential areas is after hours. So Diamond Parking isn't doing their patrols. We had contacted Northern Security, and the cost was very prohibitive. It would definitely not pay for itself, even if there was 100% participation. And so how we have it drafted is that the police department would do enforcement, and they would have to balance out with their other priority calls. And so I think that's important for council to understand as well as the residents. We did discuss that with them at the stakeholder meeting last week. As I mentioned, it's trial period, so it would expire in a year unless council decided to end it sooner. And we can come back to you. I think we decided last time you wanted to kind of get a 6-month check-in just to figure out how it's working and see if we need to make any tweaks. So this is the map, and the red lines are the streets, and those are the blocks where the permit would be in effect. And so here on Montana, so it'd be east of the alley to 5th on both sides of the street. On Roosevelt, it would be east of 3rd Street to the alley behind Capone's. I guess not really an alley, I guess it's the western end of the parking lot there. And then on Reed, it would be behind the entrance into the Midtown Lofts, and it would go east to 5th Street. And I did have a note on here, this keeps coming up, so there was concerns expressed at our stakeholder meeting on Friday, and we've continued to hear that there's some concern from the businesses, that they are concerned because there's a lack of parking in Midtown, and some of the residents on 5th Street expressed the same concern because they're not part of the pilot project, but they're worried that that might push some cars onto their street. But we did let them know this is trial basis, and we'll see how it works and if any changes need to be made. So some of the additional recommendations we've been talking about, I've presented this to you, and we have, I think, vetted several of these. The first one was a recommendation that Ignite would update those sandwich board signs to remove the hours, because before it was 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., which I think gave the impression that you couldn't park there from 11 to, say, 1 a.m. without getting ticketed. So Ignite has already made that change, so that's great. It just says no overnight parking. We have discussed with Ignite CDA to install our RFBs at the intersections of 4th and Roosevelt and 4th and Montana. And that is going to be happening within potentially the next month, possibly sooner. And that'll be done in conjunction with some of the intersection work here on Roosevelt. And Ignite is paying for those, so that is also excellent news and will really help with the pedestrian safety in the Midtown area. There was a suggestion that Trinity Lutheran Church maybe install some signage in their parking lot so that it's a little more clear that those are church parking lots. And so that we discussed that with them. I'll talk about that in a moment. There was a recommendation to install some additional speed limit signs. So we will work with city engineer to find out if that is appropriate and where those might need to be installed. We've heard from several that we definitely need to beef up the public parking signs, make them a little more visible. So there are some ones that are there now. We've heard we need to light those up, and also Councilman Gookin suggested doing something creative, and that was something that Rich and Associates said as well. So we'll work on that. And there's also been a suggestion for a creative archway sign for Midtown, and so that was rolled out on Friday as just a very conceptual. So Greg had asked for some feedback. I forget Greg's last name, Troy, if you can help me out. Johnston. So he had a kind of a conceptual rendering design drawn up, and so we're going to provide some feedback on that. It didn't have a lot of funk yet, but I think that was something people were really interested in seeing, some kind of archway sign into Midtown. And the last item is really encouraging Midtown stakeholders to work together, and so this is not just businesses, but residents as well, and we did get some positive feedback on that. So this is the map showing the RRFB locations. As I mentioned, that will be moving forward within a month or so. Status report. So Troy and I did meet with leadership from Trinity Lutheran Church about shared parking to see is there an opportunity to use their 2 parking lots or a portion of those for either some employee parking or possibly open it up somewhat to some public parking at certain times. And so they are interested in having further discussions with the city. They seemed interested, but they needed to know a little bit more, but that's all positive. Ignite CDA did make a decision on their development proposals for the Midtown property, so they have selected Midtown Ventures. So that's the John and Ann Butler team, and so that'll be moving forward. And the nice thing with that development proposal is that it will have a lot of parking. So that's nice, as well as a green space. We are working with Streets and Engineering to install some additional lighting in both of the public parking lots. That'll also be happening in the short term, hopefully. We're working on some agreements with the Idaho Youth Ranch and trying to extend the power so that we can fully light those, and then some of this will depend too on if we can expand the 3rd Street parking lot. We will be also looking to improve the parking lots with either chip seal or completely repaving, so we'll be talking to Tim Martin about that and figuring out the condition and the cost if we were to do a full repavement. And then this next item we had talked about before was the loading zone on 4th Street. So the Midtown stakeholders had kind of mixed opinion about that. You know, is that necessary or not? And so that's something I think we may evaluate a little bit further unless council has a strong feeling about that. The resident-only parking area would restrict these larger commercial vehicles. Of course, anyone coming in and just doing a UPS drop-off would be able to do that, but that's something we want to look at, see if, do we need to implement that loading zone on 4th, or will it work to do the loading zones in the areas where they're already loading and to encourage alley use. So we'll bring that back to you. And then, as I mentioned, we did have our stakeholder meeting on Friday. We had about 24 stakeholders attend, which was great, and it was very lively, but we had some positive discussions. And I would say 60 to 75% actually want to work together to form some kind of partnership or association, and they asked to reconvene in a couple weeks to a month. So wanted to thank all of them for participating. We have several in the audience this evening, so it's great to see that there is some interest in working together. I think that would be very important for the Midtown area. So that's all I have for you. So the decision point is to adopt a pilot project for Midtown resident-only parking permit program, including any modifications that you may have this evening.
All right, questions for Hillary? Dan?
Yep. Let's see, where it says that they have to have 66% in their, I guess it's the red zone, so
Yes.
most of those only have 2 properties, it looks like, so it's basically still all or nothing.
It is on that street. The other ones would be 2 of the 3 homes would need to participate. I think we kind of looked at that last time I presented to you. So
Okay.
on Reed, that is correct. Both of those
And
residences
it looks
would
like
need to
up on
participate.
Montana too.
Montana actually has on north and south side, so there are 3 properties on that. So 2 of the 3 would have to participate. And then there are 3 properties on Roosevelt as well.
And then just clarification, under the program outline at the bottom of this first page, it says the property owner must provide proof of property ownership to the city clerk, yada, yada. But I assume, or the whoever's there, because I mean, obviously the renter, whoever's there,
Right, so
is
if
the one who
they're
needs it.
a legal renter, exactly, yes.
Okay.
And if there's an owner and a renter both living in the house, if they get 2 tags, then one can use one and the other can use the other one.
Okay.
Woody?
I have a lively question.
Okay, let's hear your lively
So
question.
what have we got money-wise in this thing so far? Yeah, I know you got 16 for the flashers. Is there some kind of a budgetary ballpark when it's all done? Are we talking 50?
You know, we did talk with, I don't know exactly, I know Tim Martin has been using streetlights and repurposing those, so we're trying to save money on some of those things, but we are going to be working with Ignite to purchase some new lights for the parking lot. So I think a lot of it's going to be paid for by Ignite. So the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, both of those will be Ignite. I think the parking lot improvements, the lights in the parking lots will be Ignite. I'm not sure on signage and things like that. I think it'd be great if we can get Ignite to pay for that. I know at your joint workshop discussion, there was some mention of Midtown, and let's get it right. Let's kind of, you know, button it up before the Lake District expires.
So if this passes tonight, signs will be installed when?
They would be, so what we would need to do, so if this gets passed tonight, then we would be able to get the hang tags ready to go, and as soon as we have the 66% on each of the blocks, we can get Streets and Engineering to produce those signs and get those installed. So I would say within a couple weeks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That was lively. Thank
That
you.
was lively.
And Woody, we had talked before on the Ignite board that there would be some cost sharing. Ignite it has some funding to put towards that, and the city parking fund would also have some funds to go towards some parking issues. So that's where the funding would come.
Beautiful.
Any other questions for Hillary? So if there are no other questions, we'll be looking for council action. Oh, I'm sorry. Kiki.
I just want to thank you. I was just going to mention that I attended the stakeholder meeting on Friday, and it was a very lively and spirited discussion, but I felt encouraged that there was a good cross-section of representation between the businesses, some of the homeowners that are affected, and surrounding property owners as well. And they've made a lot of progress and wanting to keep working together, and so that's very encouraging to stay behind a project like this. I think two things that I still took away with this is a very unique set of roads for a pilot project, in that it's specific homes that will be getting this permit. It isn't sort of like the Fort Ground where the entire neighborhood has, passes. In other words, you will basically have a permit but park in front of your own house, where in the Fort Ground you could have a permit and park anywhere in the Fort Ground because it's the entire area. So that's something that's going to be interesting to try to navigate until, a broader area is. And the fact that it's not reciprocal to businesses is going to be really important to keep them at the table. And also, I heard at the meeting that there's a potential that there could be a paved alley come out of this whole development project, which would actually help a lot of the concerns that the businesses had about parking. So I thought that was important to keep in front. But having said that, I think that there's been a huge amount of work done. I think that it's been received very positively by the businesses and the residents there. And so I would make a motion to approve the residential-only parking permits in certain blocks in Midtown known as number 19-1 or 010.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? We'll go to Dan. Dan.
Thank you. And sorry about my voice. I'm getting over a cold, but I wanted to thank you, Hillary, for working on this. Appreciate the effort and time you put into it. Also want to caution the neighbors who get these things. Enforcement's going to be an issue. Someone's going to be parked in front of your house without a permit, and you're going to call the police, and they're going to be busy. And so, as long as they know that, let's do it.
Dan.
Well, just that I'm going to support this, but I am glad to hear that it's got a framework of, a trial for a year, and I do think probably the midpoint, so if it really gets rolling in about May, then we'll go through the summer and early fall, and because I can appreciate, I mean, there's some legitimate concerns from several angles, so, but I think you've got to try something, and this probably makes sense, so appreciate the efforts and support it as a pilot test project, so.
All right. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah.
English?
Yes.
Eddinger?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Hillary. Makes motion to go into executive session from someone.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-206, Section B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student, and C, to acquire an interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are in executive session.